Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Deborah Peters Show, broadcasting from sunny California this week. And so happy to be back in my old neighborhood and see some friends. And out here, we're doing some work with my clients and got a couple speaking gigs. So I'm working remotely. Lighting's not perfect, but thank you so much for being willing to just roll with me on this. I have an amazing guest today. His name is Shad Sullivan. Before I introduce him, I want to tell you a little bit about the reason why I'm doing this show. There's so much happening and there's so much change going on in the world. I felt a need for a show that would raise consciousness within the thinking of humanity, basically. And what is consciousness? It's just a heightened self-awareness, where rather than accept something from the outside as being your truth, you actually have a connection with your creator. You have a relationship with God that guides you through your life. And from that place, you're never alone, you're never in lack, and struggle no longer is on your radar. And so as we continue to make our shifts and changes post pandemic, one of the things that I noticed during the 2020 season, I'm going to call it that, was a decreasingly option for purchasing high quality beef in the store. And I thought to myself, well, this is kind of weird. We've got this, I can't find American beef anywhere. And I grew up on a farm, so I know everything about what goes into an animal from, conception to the time that calf drops to the time it goes to market, and what goes into its body. And I just couldn't bring myself to be purchasing beef in the store that was coming from not just one, but multiple countries, and all be in one package. So I just felt really compelled to reach out to Shad and invite him onto my show. Shad, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Deborah, for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and happy post-Thanksgiving.
And
I really appreciate you being here. I know you've got a little bit of a cold and a little bit under the weather, so yeah,
it's okay.
You. Bless you.
Yeah, it's okay.
So Shad's based in Texas, guys, and he's a cattle rancher, American cattle rancher. When I did the pre-interview with him, it was just amazing. I mean, we talked about just like everything from what's happening in the market for consumers, in the height of the prices on the food that we're buying, the inability, the lack of to be able to get high quality US food, beef, and right down to how he chooses to finish his cattle and which grass to feed them, and even goes as far as to move them from Texas to Colorado to get a proper finish on them. So when you bite into that steak that you love, you're getting the highest possible taste and quality. So what can you tell us is happening right now for consumers that are having a hard go getting high quality beef on their table?
Well, that is a loaded question, Deborah. I think one of the things that we have to really sit back and consider right now is inflationary issues. We are sitting at the highest inflation rate in 40 years in America. So people are literally getting behind, if not at the very best, living paycheck to paycheck. And so we have consumers that really drive demand. They want high quality, safe American beef. And since COVID became an issue in, what was it, 2019, March of 2019, we've really had some trouble guaranteeing our consumer, the people who put the bread and butter back to our tables, so to speak. We've had a hard time providing what they are asking for. And truthfully, our consumers are, number one, they are America loving, they're freedom loving.
Sure.
Number two, our consumers want a safe product. They want an affordable product, and they want a product that tastes good, and they want origin. They want to know where that product comes from. They're
Sure.
not asking for all of these other things like sustainability, because honestly, our consumers don't know what sustainability is. But those are the things that our consumer wants. And one of the issues that we're dealing with right now is affordability. Can
Sure.
our consumer go to the store and buy any piece of meat, even if it's not beef, but we prefer to talk about beef because that's our industry? Can they afford it, and can they take it home to their family? And right now, it's really tough. And when they do go in there and they say, "Oh man, there's a cut of beef that I'd really like to take home," where does that cut of beef come from? And we are unable to prove where that cut of beef comes from unless it is voluntarily marked a country of origin label. Our beef, the beef that you buy in the store, can come from 21, 22 different countries. It can come into the United States. It can change packaging. It can change shape, a form. They can cut it in half and then be labeled product of the USA. So it's important to understand that just because there's a product of the USA sticker on that package of beef
Yeah.
does not mean it came from the United States.
See,
So
that's the thing. Sorry, but that's the thing that really became glaringly obvious to me. You know, I was in, and it changed. It changed during 2020. I noticed it just became like it was like a demarcation line where one day it was really clearly obvious that this was a USA product, and then the next day I couldn't even find the language on the packaging.
right,
It just disappeared. And from what I could see, it looked like they didn't have to give you any information, which wasn't that something that was a law that you had to give the point of origin?
it was from 2008 to 2013, I believe. We had mandatory country of origin labeling, and Canada and Mexico thought that that was an unfair practice. And so they sued the United States through the World Trade Organization, the WTO, to fine us basically for requiring us to separate their animals from ours. They thought it was unfair trade. So what
Wow.
happened was our government, our legislators, over the last 25, 30 years have allowed the centralization of our processing, all food processing, but especially our beef processing plants.
Right.
The amount of power and money that those beef processors have, there are four main beef processors that they control 85% of the food of the beef supply chain. The power that they have is incredibly ridiculous. And so they teamed up with our legislature in conjunction with this WTO
The
lawsuit from Canada and
WTO.
Mexico, and really forced Congress to repeal the mandatory country of origin rule, in which we saw the greatest, subsequently saw the greatest price decrease in American history for beef products.
So
So
can I ask a question?
yes,
And this might seem a little rudimentary, but why would we need to have beef from any other country? Can we not produce enough of our own?
well, that is up for debate. I don't think anybody is against trade,
Okay.
international trade. I'm certainly not against international trade, but I am against unfair international trade. And
Sure.
I do not see one problem with the American product being lifted as high as we can in the United States. For example, if I am a specialty meat exporter, and let's say I'm buying beef from you and I want to sell it in any foreign country, I'm going to take that beef over there, inspected properly, and I am going to put it on a shelf. And above that shelf, I'm going to say, country of origin, the United States of America. And those people are going to buy that because they
Because
know,
of that.
because of that.
Yeah.
And because they know our beef inspection process is the most rigorous in the world. We have the safest food supply of any in the world. We have the highest quality beef supply of any in the world. So they really do want that. But yet, if you come to the United States, it's not a requirement.
Amazing.
We don't even require that to be above our own beef on the shelf. Now, you can voluntarily do that, no doubt. But why are we disguising our own beef to our consumers? Because what we've done with the merger, acquisition, and mergers of these, meat packing conglomerates, which, by the way, two of them are Brazilian owned. What we've done is we've centralized that, and so they can import all that lower, inferior quality beef, less regulated, and they can put it on top of ours, which is more expensive and higher regulated, and they can sell it on the top end while giving us the lowest price available. See, so it's all a game of deception. And I just find it a problem if we're going to be true Americans and we want to respect our consumer. Why are we not giving them freedom of choice? And that's what mandatory country of origin labeling does. I don't mind if there's Mexican beef on the shelf, Canadian beef on the shelf, but let our consumer pick which one they want. And I have no doubt that they'll pick the American product.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, when you think of what goes into the time, even the time frame of having the shipping and coming into the inspection, coming into a new country, and then by the time it hits the shelf, you can have your own local product half the time, probably. I mean, I'm speculating, but that would make sense to me.
On top of that, Deborah, I mean, we love our country. I mean, the consumer loves their country, so they're going to pick our. I mean, I always challenge my peers that argue with me on this. I say, go and interview 10 people at the meat counter in your local grocery store, and I guarantee you're going to find 10 out of 10 say they want the American product.
Sure,
they do.
100%.
I've done it before.
Yeah, so, and why wouldn't you?
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with uplifting the American product. There's nothing wrong with it. Put the label on the beef and let the consumer sort it out.
Well, and I think we were talking about this in the pre-interview. I've been, since this started coming to my attention, trying to purchase my own food in 2020, then it turned into kind of an experiment for me, like a little research experiment where whatever product I'm purchasing, whether, it's an item of clothing, something for my house or food or whatever it is, I always look at where it was made.
Sure.
And I mean, hard pressed to find anything made in the USA, which is the challenge. Like, we've given up so much of our own production and our own manufacturing to other countries for cheaper labor, et cetera.
Yes. But here's the difference, Deborah. Beef and pork are the only products that are imported into the United States of America that don't require a country of origin label. Those are the only two products.
Okay, so what is the deal?
It's called pay to play. And so when you have these centralized corporate systems and they gain so much money, we're talking during COVID, the profits of these corporations just went through the roof into the billions and billions, hundreds of millions per week, millions and millions per day. And they gain all of this power, and that power has influence. It has undue influence. And I've always said, I will never be a politician, but if I were, the first thing I would do would end lobbying. They have lobbying power in our government, and the pay-to-play system is killing our producing
I
Americans. And
agree with you.
I'm not talking about just the beef producing Americans. I'm talking about those who produce goods and services in the United States. The lobbying power is killing them.
I agree. I had the opportunity to be a legislative chairperson for a trade association,
Okay.
and for a few years, and like I was like a deer in headlights. I'd never been on Capitol Hill in my life, and
Right.
so we're trekking out to Capitol Hill every year for lobby season. We're going to Sacramento, walking the halls of Congress, sitting down with typically the congressperson's aide or the senator's aide, and discussing the issues. And that's really where the decisions get made, is at the aide level, and then gets kind of shuffled up across their desk for signature. But you literally can change laws by getting your butt into Congress and having a conversation with someone that bends the ear of the legislature or the whatever politician it is. And I think that this is probably something that goes unnoticed. Most Americans don't think that they make a difference, and so they don't try. And to your point, when you're showing up in and working over a relationship because you can do favors for people and you're throwing money at it, think of how fast those decisions can get made in your favor.
It's corruption at its finest. And one of the problems we're seeing now, and have been for a few years, I've been calling it out a little bit, is those how should I put that? Legislators are no longer looking out for the best interests of their American constituents. They're actually looking out for the constituent, or for the global elite. And
Sure.
they have basically, in my opinion, became treasonous against the United States, and are giving our sovereignty and power over to authorities that have no business having any kind of power over decision-making power over the United States. And that included the World Trade Organization. During that Cool case, people don't realize that one of the judges that sat on that was a Mexican national. Well, I'm sure he wasn't. There was no, as my dad before he died, he'd call that. I don't want to tell you what he'd call it, but anyway, it was certainly a conflict of interest. And so where are our loyalties? I want to push out to Americans that they have to speak up. We have to speak up now, because we are losing. Once we lose the power, our personal individual power in any kind of production system, but especially agriculture production, you lose that power, and we're headed there. I'm telling you, the regulations that are coming down the road are scary, scary. Once we lose that, we have to fight. We have to literally fight with guns to get out of it. And
Oh
so
my God.
our forefathers were so smart. I mean, I think about our forefathers every day, and I think, how did they know all of this would come to pass? We have checks and balances to keep this all from happening. But now that those checks and balances don't work properly, because we've lost the loyalty of those who lead this nation. And that's all because of money and power.
It is all because of money and power. So let's kind of pivot for a second, and then we'll come back to that, because I want to talk a little bit about food quality, and maybe do a little bit of education toward the consumer to make a decision. I mean, I had the benefit of growing up on a farm. We ran a couple hundred head of cattle. We always had yearlings that went to market in the autumn.
Right.
You've been to lots of auction sales, and did all that. So I have that understanding of what it takes to go from, okay, this is my pet cow,
Right.
this is my pet calf, and now this is the steak on our table.
Sure.
And the emotional pain as a kid going through that, but you learn that this is your livelihood, like this is your salary. This is
Sure.
the city people, you get paid, instead of getting paid every month or every 2 weeks, you get paid once a year.
Correct.
Which I think we should start there. It's like, I feel like I got to back up. I feel like what I've been observing is like an attack on the, I don't know what to call it, the country way of life, the organic way of life, you know, the relationship with the earth that sustains us. I feel like there's been a diminishing understanding of what that really is, to the point where most people don't even know where their beef or their steak or their salad comes from. They think it either comes from the restaurant or from the grocery store.
So let me hit that point.
Yeah.
Let me hit that point really quick. I continually tell people, once we get 3 generations away from the farm, we lose consciousness of where our food comes from. And right now we are past 3 generations. We're 4 generations. You have to remember, I don't know, let's say 1920. Probably, I'm going to say it in 1920, 80% plus of the population had a direct relationship with the farm, production agriculture.
Yeah, sure.
Today, 2020, less than 1% has a direct relationship with production agriculture. So that means that 1% or less are feeding a nation or a world. Okay, so that means all of these people in between have lost their relationship with the land and their relationship with the circle of life, and how undeniably important, how incredibly important it is to realize that where your food comes from is life, right? So,
yes. Life-giving life.
It is. It is literally a circle of life. And so when you lose that relationship, you lose that respect. And it's not just respect for the farm. You can see this as just in everyday life. We in the world, and I'll speak for Americans, I look across America and I say right now, we have no respect for life at all.
Yeah,
There
I
is
agree.
no respect for life.
I agree.
I mean, we are killing each other at incredible rates. We are aborting our babies. I mean, if people knew, and I don't care what side of the abortion side you're on, if people knew how hard we worked to save a baby inside a cow, it's unreal.
I know, right?
I mean, it's unreal. We'll go to every length to save all of these precious God-given gifts to sustain our lives. And I'm not talking, it's not about the money, or we wouldn't be doing it, right?
You do it for the love of the animal.
It's for the love. And so when you get this far beyond the farm, you don't have any of that empathy for life, and it just changes the rules. And so I like to go back and say, you know, this is all about, there's a lot of it is about an agenda. And it's a global agenda. And that's why you're seeing the attack on the food system, especially meat. You know, at the World Economic Forum just 2 weeks ago, they served fake beef.
Oh my God.
The reason, and that's a whole different podcast. I mean,
that's another conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation, but it is all interwoven. And so we have perpetuated propaganda throughout the last 10 to 20, 25, 30 years to basically mold our youth into thinking these certain things were bad and these certain things were cruel. And when all it really amounts to is it's a life cycle, you know, and it's to be respected and it's to be revered and put on a pedestal. But you know, my answer to you is, once we get 4 generations out from the production phase, you don't understand it.
Right? How could you? I mean, you have no experience with
it.
Yeah. I mean, for me growing up, it was we were at the mercy of Mother Nature, you know, because we did a mixed farming operation, so we had grain as well. And
sure,
you know, it was all about the timing, when you got when the frost left and you got the crop in the ground, and then when the rain came and how much sun came, and then the crops up. And if you got a hailstorm, it was flattened. I
Yep.
mean, you're constantly like at the mercy of whatever Mother Nature decided to dish out. And there was just so much faith that went with that lifestyle, because you can't get out into the farm field sowing the seeds and expecting to starve in the winter. You have to go out there every single year doing the same routine, busting your butt, 18 hours a day, trying to stay ahead of the weather. And you have to go there in faith that there's a crop in the fall.
Well, certainly if you never planted one, there's not going to be one, right?
I know, right?
So we have to step out there in faith, and all the time I'm like, people are like, when I'm farming, and I'm not a good farmer, but I do try. They're like, "Are you already planting?" And I said, "I won't have any crop if I don't plant." So, that's a big deal. But I always tell my friends, I said, in our business, and I'm talking agriculture as a whole, there's only one thing that we truly can control, and that is our work ethic. So everything else we have to put out there in faith and abide by God's word, because he tells us to go out there and plant the seed, be prepared for the harvest. And sometimes, certainly in my situation, my harvest takes a year, one whole year to raise a calf. And sometimes you even go past it. You have to be prepared because it doesn't happen overnight. So you really have to just prepare your fields and work hard. You have to be diligent. You have to keep your mind in the game, be respectful. One thing that we do at our house is we really try to take on some transparency to the consumer. We think that the consumer is very, very important part of our operation. And so we try to be as honest. Well, we are honest. I mean, we just don't go any other direction. We're as honest as we can be. And we think that that's vital in our survivability. And I'll tell you what, it's proven to be really fantastic since COVID. We have sold farm to fork beef like you can't believe. And that's just been a great blessing for us.
Absolutely, because the consumer, most of the consumers figure out you just got to step aside from the middle guy, which is the grocery store, where you can't get a clear answer on what it is that you're actually buying, and go direct to the source. And that's you.
That's exactly right. And we even saw instances mid-COVID and post-COVID where some of these guys selling farm to fork were making really good deals with grocery stores. And then the big four come in and threaten the grocery stores. And then them guys lose their farm to table movement right there. And so that, there's some more of that corrupt, but if the consumer would just demand USA beef, we have legislation being presented now in the AMP Act and SB 2716, which is the Truth in Labeling Act, the Country of Origin Labeling Bill. And we can do it if we can get all of our consumers to call their representatives, their congressional representatives, and say, hey, we need sponsors and we need support. The reason we're not winning this is because of the pay-to-play system. That's the reason we cannot our consumers can't be guaranteed that they're getting American beef today, is because of the pay-to-play system in Congress.
Right. And people, I don't think people are aware. So it's called SB 2716.
That's right.
And this is the Truth in Labeling Act.
That's right.
And what's the timeline on the decision being made on that?
Well, we're just gaining right now. We're just gaining sponsors right now. And that's where we're at on that.
Okay. So we need to get that out to as many people as we can.
Yep. And for more information, you can go to labelourbeef.com.
Okay. Well, that's kind of a good segue, because when we were doing the pre-interview, you mentioned something about people are going to have to start registering their gardens.
Yeah. So we got, of course, I get USDA email updates often.
Sure.
And they sent one later this fall. I'd have to go find it, but they did send one, and they would like for Americans to voluntarily register their gardens in the United States.
That's
So,
insane.
yeah, well, I can tell you that happened in communist Cuba and during the Mao Revolution, during all those communist movements that killed millions and millions of people. So I would say I am not pro-registering your garden.
Absolutely not. And why would you?
Gosh,
If it's your land, you're eating off the land, you're taking care of the land. It's not even, you're not even eating off the land, you're actually caring for the land by planting the seeds and letting that nutrient cycle happen.
This is where we get back into the complexity of how interwoven all of this corruption is, Deborah. And there is no doubt that some of our bureaucratic leaders are globalists in nature and do not believe in freedom and liberty. And this attack, or what I call the war on beef, is entrenched so deeply at the very top of global power that it's hard to comprehend for just the reason I understand it, and is because I've been studying it since 2009. Sure. And it gets more complex every day, but all of this is interwoven. All of these, this inflationary, the war on beef, the attack on private property rights, all of this is about power and control. And we have to be real careful as Americans what we give up, because I want to stress that without private property is our most wholesome gift provided to us by our forefathers. Without private property, there is no freedom.
There's
Without
zero freedom.
Property,
yeah.
You cannot produce anything. So private property equals freedom. And what they don't want, and we're seeing this in the movement across the world in climate change, Executive Order 14008, which is the America the Beautiful Executive Order, which is to set 30% of America's land and waters aside for preservation by 2030. That's going to be followed up by the UN 50 by 50 to set 50% of the world's the global land and waters aside for preservation. All of this is what I'm explaining to you is commingled. It's interwoven into each other.
I got you.
And you can follow it from the top. I've got diagrams, and it's just amazing how it all comes together. And it's all about food control. This is about food control, because once you control the food, see, they take your land. That's right. They control the people. Once they take your land, you have no way to provide for your family, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What they're after is the land. So as crazy as that sounds, and it does sound crazy, it is happening. And it's happening at a very fast rate of speed. But what God wills will be done. And
absolutely.
I'm going to fight all I can to keep it from happening, even though I'm just a rancher.
Well, yeah, but you're not just a rancher. I mean, and I think that this is where there needs to be a real wake up. I can tell you that growing up, I couldn't wait to leave, and I was just a kid that didn't know any better. Like, yeah. I just felt limited. I wanted to go to the town or the city where there was people and I could do bigger things. And I just didn't know any better, and now I can't wait to go back. Like, how far can I move out of the city?
But isn't that coming to be a beautiful story? I can remember I was 18 years old and I graduated from high school on May 23rd, 1992. And on May 24th, I left.
You were gone.
I went and got me a job in town. My dad was like, "You don't need to do that." And I said, "Dad, I got to get away from you for a little while." And I went and got a job building houses. And it was 3 months between that day and then when I started college. And I said, Dad, I got to get away. I got to learn something else. And I did. And it was the most crucial 3 months of my life. It changed me forever. And here I am back. I've been here almost 30 years now.
Well, yeah, I wish I'm really trying to figure out how to do this, because what the wake up call for me was during the pandemic. I was in downtown Los Angeles, had my office there, had my home there, and it was like a prison. I like trapped in a city. And I said to myself, there's no way out. Like, it's amazing how they can lock down a city that really has no walls. And so if everybody was trying to do some sort of a purge out of a city, if there was whatever, some kind of a massive disaster and people are trying to escape the city, you would never get out.
Yeah.
I did an assessment and I'm like, you'd probably die here, because there just would be no way millions of people could get out with the infrastructure that exists. And so to me, it was like, girl, you got to get out of here.
It's funny that you say that, because I was just watching all of this protesting that's going on in China last night.
Right.
And I was like, Shad, what would you do if you were there? And I told myself I would go into my apartment and I would stay put and probably die there, because you ain't getting out.
There's no way out.
Nope.
Well, and what's interesting on that note is the first 2 or 3 days that went on, those protests went on, the media hid that from the world.
Yes.
And then it was what, the legacy media hid that from the world. And then it was the other more awake medias, conscious medias that got a hold of it and started spreading the word. But, you said something about Cuba, and I was just spent Thanksgiving with some friends that took a trip as a family to Cuba. And they said it was just like horrifying what that kind of a government structure has, where there was literally nothing on the shelves in the stores. And if there was, it would be the same can of beans for shelves and rows of shelves. And they kind of did like this bed and breakfast. So for all of the people that think that you'll own nothing and be happy actually might feel good to you because you don't have to do anything or work or have any ambition. What happens in Cuba is they will put another family in the upstairs of your home. Like, they decide. So if, let's say you're living in a house and it's a 2-story house, the government decides who gets to occupy the house with you.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you're not of the same mindset,
wow,
and maybe one is pro-communist and one is pro-liberty, guess who's spying on who?
And I always like to, every once in a while, I see these interviews of Cuban Americans in South Florida, and
Sure.
they're like, you Americans are crazy, stupid. You don't want to live under those kinds of tyranny, that kind of tyranny.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it comes from the horse's mouth, wouldn't you think you'd kind of wake up? But you see, I think that we've had such an easy life in the United States that we've never suffered. My dad, before my dad died, he of course, that's been almost 12 years ago now. And he says, Shad, nothing will ever change until everybody sits in the dark, cold and hungry.
Yes, true.
So without suffering, you don't understand how bad you've had it, or you can have it. It takes suffering to appreciate the good, and we've never suffered here.
No, it's been good for a long, long time. And so good that when there's no reference point, like you're saying, to it being bad, then the desire to defend what is doesn't have any motivation or inspiration. Like, why would I defend this? It's all I've ever known. I can't imagine. I don't have a reference point for being anything other than this. So I think there's a large amount of the masses don't take this seriously.
Yep, I agree with you. And, I always tell people, tyranny has no loyalty. And they look at me like, what do you mean? And I'm like, at the end of the day, when there's only two tyrants left, one's going to kill the other.
100%. Yeah.
You know, I'll go to my grave telling people that, because it's really, some of these people fighting for the things that they're fighting for, which are evil in nature, they think that their loyalties to those tyrants will save them, and it won't.
No.
It won't save them.
So I think this kind of brings us to a bigger, if it can be, a bigger issue, and that is just a lack of, maybe that's why I created this show after all, is like a lack of consciousness, unable to really see what's in front of them and realize that the materialism, and listen, I like luxury just like everybody else. I like my nice stuff.
Me too.
But the luxury medication, the medication of materialism, has very short legs, and it has no fulfillment, like it has no soul.
Nope. And that's why we see so many people lost today, because they've bought into the world, right? Well, they've bought into stuff that isn't lasting, and that hurts our nation.
Absolutely. So the biggest piece of that is this redirect toward external things, external, whatever on the outside can make you feel good for the moment, rather than having a deep and meaningful relationship with your creator, and having that unconditional love fill you so much that you never feel a void.
It's powerful. It's powerful. People spend a lifetime searching for, I've known people, and don't get me wrong. Hey, I'm a Cadillac man. My whole goal in life was to get to the point where I could afford a new Cadillac, and I have one, but it's not a new one. Okay. But I like nice things too, but these nice things aren't what it's about. It's about these relationships. And ultimately for me, it's about my salvation. It's about what happens beyond the grave. Right. And, so that's what I try to teach my son, and my wife and I. We work hard to teach him how to treat people. He's a very kind and generous person. I'm not saying you have to like everybody, but we certainly have to love everybody. We have to respect our foundation. There's not a whole lot that is more important than knowing where you came from. That is so important. That lineage and how you came to be, and I think if we got back to that grassroots level of just making, I saw something last night about the breakdown of America started at the breakdown of the family dinner table. I think there's something to that. Yeah. Even when I was a kid, we ate at 6:00 every evening. We all sat down. My dad, we talked about things, and we didn't have our cell phones, and we didn't have cell phones when I was a kid anyway, but these things have changed culture, and what we have to get back to is that heart culture. I think, Deborah, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I think that's the missing piece. And, for me, that came from growing up around animals.
Yes.
If you didn't respect your animal would kick your ass. I've had my fair share of cows chase me down, and my horse pinned me up against the fence, and it's because of me. Like, it was my energy, it was my lack of respect for that animal. And the flip side was, they'd do anything for you when you love and respected them. And that's a really good baseline teaching for humanity. It's like,
it really is that respect. I can remember on several occasions, cattle killing blizzards,
Yeah.
hitting the plains. And I can remember my mom and dad, and they had us kids out there, and we did all we could to save these calves. I mean, the barometric pressure dropped, cows started calving right in the middle of the blizzard. And I mean, we were trying to save lives. And I can remember my dad almost crying at the end of this, because we'd lost so many calves, but we had saved a ton of them too.
Yeah.
And it is the world, the powers of the unknown and the unseen, that faith that we're talking about, are incredible powers, man. They are.
They really are.
Yeah.
They really are. I know there was lots of times we'd be out in the middle of the night pulling calves.
Yep.
And then we used to keep old whiskey bottles filled with colostrum from the previous cow, and they'd be in the freezer. So you'd get those out and you put them in a pot on the stove and start warming them up slowly so you didn't break the glass. And then you keep the calf in the house all night. And,
oh my
God, I know all about that.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter what's going on. Like what social event, whatever, you could be sicker than a dog with the flu, and you got to go do it.
Yep. We don't have no choice.
What can we leave people with? I definitely want to do a part 2 with you on this, because I think we really want to start educating people that live in the city that haven't even been to a farm, like wouldn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
There are children, for example, in parts of Los Angeles that have never seen the ocean.
Wow.
And it's maybe 5 miles.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you take and you consider out of a population, if the kid hasn't been 5 miles to the Pacific Ocean, how could they have ever been to a farm?
They couldn't have been to a farm, right?
That's my goal, actually, is to set up some kind of farm situation where, I can run my seminars for my corporate clients, and then in between have a place for kids to come and garden and take care of animals, and like really get their feet and their hands in the earth and learn this is where you come from.
Yeah.
You got to take care of it. So what can we leave people with?
I think that we have to get back to the very ground level, to the most grassroots level, and say, how did we get here? This is what we teach our children. How did we get here? I was watching something on the internet the other night, and this guy, a grown man, saw I can't remember what animal it was, but he didn't, I think it was a cow, and he didn't know it was a cow. He was calling it a donkey or something. And I'm like, how could these most simple things be confused by a great part of the population? So I think we have to get back to our roots, and we have to start pushing our story out to the consumer. And part of that is this new, quote unquote, new movement we call farm to table.
Yeah.
Now, I was talking to my mom. My mom was down here for Thanksgiving, and she's a rancher, and she was born and raised on that ranch. She lives on today. And she can do anything. She can slaughter a cow. She can do whatever you want her to. But I said, we were talking about all this, and she says, we've got to teach these kids the most fundamental things that we can. Like, where does milk come from? Well, milk comes from the mom, right? Milk comes from the mom. So all of these things that maybe we haven't done, we have to start doing. And I don't know, she was kind of farm to table when it wasn't cool to be farm to table.
Right. That was just life.
It's just life. It's like what you were talking about. It was just life. But we have an opportunity because of COVID. Maybe COVID was a gift in this way. To bring life back to the farm in a farm to table movement. And, there's all kinds of websites out there. One that I like to send people to is usabeef.org. And what that does is you can go to that website, and we have beef producers in every state listed on that list that you can actually find that's closest to you and go to their farm and buy beef.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So I think we've got, I'm not sure how many's on there now. I know we had 47 states listed on that website, RCAF USA, which I'm a member of the board of directors there. We sponsor that website. And so that's been really neat to see. And it's happened in the vegetable crop production. We support a lot of farm to table in our family, but at the same time, in a rural area, we have a lot of those roadside stands that we're able to participate with that in. But I think we're starting to see in Texas, at least, some of our educational systems turning in the positive. Winsboro ISD just announced yesterday a $4 million packing facility to come online for their agriculture program. There is a school out in the Panhandle, and I cannot remember what school it is, but they put in a beef production program. So the kids, they had a gentleman donate some land. The kids actually put some cows and calves together, and then they raise those all the way to the plate. And so that's been really neat to see. And those are happening all over Texas. You're not going to find that really in the more liberal states like Colorado, but I suggest to all of the ag teachers out there to take the bull by the horns and get as low and just as low to the ground as you can. Mm-hmm. We can only go up.
Get back to the roots.
Back to the roots and teach these kids the firm foundation of really what life is. And that is from the seed up, right? So that's my suggestion.
No, I think that's great. And I had no idea about the usabeef.org website.
Yes.
So,
yep. You can go to usabeef.org and find a beef producer near you that you can purchase beef from. And at the same time, you can go to demandusabeef.com and sign a petition to re-implement mandatory country of origin labeling. I think we have 800,000 signatures on that so far.
So say that last one again,
demandusabeef.com.
Okay, and sign the petition. Okay, We'll make sure that this gets into all the show notes on all the major platforms that my show's on. It's on all of them, from iTunes, Amazon Music, everywhere. So we'll make sure that that's in there. And before I say goodbye to you, tell us how we can buy beef direct from Shad Sullivan.
Well, I don't ship. So I just sell locally. I just sell locally. And honestly, I have a really good trade with repeat customers, and I deliver it to them. But I do have some product. You can go to Shad Sullivan Facebook and buy caps and things such as that. So that's all good.
Oh, that's fantastic, Shad.
I don't want to, honestly, Deborah, I don't want to capitalize off of anything. I want to put out education to the public. I want America strong, and I want to do all I can for my producing peers and my consuming peers, just to say, we've done good.
Yes.
And I don't think it's my job to make money off of that.
No, I totally understand. And I think too, it's like, people definitely want to support you. I mean, why wouldn't we, right? And it's okay to receive. It's okay to have people come and support you because of what you're doing is just good, right?
Well,
it's just good.
You know what? It comes down to this. I love my country, and I want my kid to taste the sweet taste of freedom after I'm dead and gone. That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely. Yep. I hear you loud and clear on that one. And, I think that we've got some fighters in the ring right now that are seeing that needs to be taken care of. So we just have to keep coming together and making that happen.
God bless you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for being here today.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate you. And I'm going to definitely have Margie reach out to you and get you back on again, because I want to dig into, the cost of what it takes to actually turn an animal into something that's on your table, and what it is that you go through in terms of the sacrifice of your lifestyle to be of service to humanity. I mean, other than water, you're feeding humanity. It does,
Absolutely.
It's a big sacrifice to dedicate your life to that when you could be doing a whole lot of other things. It's a lot easier, but it's a choice you've made.
Well, and we're proud to do it because we love where we came from.
Exactly. Well, thank you. Bless you.
You bet.
And we'll talk to you real soon. And remember, everybody, subscribe, hit the like button, share with your friends, grab this recording and get it out to the world. And most importantly, stay aligned, stay alert, and stay awake.